Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is your boy Ali. Hope everybody's doing good, staying safe out there. It's been some time I haven't made a video, but today I just thought, it would be a really good time to talk about project management tips from a consultant's point of view. So I just thought it would be a great time to make a video about this because there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get into the project management field and don't have the experience and don't know what they're going to get into if they do take on a role such as that. So there's been a lot of times where I have been put into a project as a project manager, overseeing a bunch of resources from different parts of the world. So depending on the size of the project, if you have EMEA, APAC, or Hong Kong, and then you have Canada, you have other countries involved. So you need some sort of governance model on top of that, which is pretty much doing the project management, making sure everything is transparent across the different teams, across the different resources, and everything is meeting the timelines that was allocated for the time to get accomplished in. Because if there's no project management, time could get pushed back, and that causes resources to stay on the project longer, and that cause budget constraints and all kinds of stuff. Now, I don't have any PMP certification, not that you need one. If you have production or prod experience and working in the real world as a project manager, that's all you really need to be able to understand how to manage a project. Now, there's a lot of tools that project managers use, so get familiar with them and see how those tools work and why they are being used. So before we waste any time, let's jump into project management tips from a consultant like myself. So first thing you want to do is look at the scope of work. Now, scope of work is pretty much a byproduct of project concept document. Project concept document is once the deal is signed, it turns into a PCD. PCD eventually turns into scope of work. Now, scope of work is what the client's trying to get done from your company, so you need to allocate resources. Now, resources is something maybe your engagement manager will worry about, and he will be taking care of the resources part, and you might be one of the resources that gets pulled into a project. So your job would be to be a project manager. You want to make sure that your engagement manager gives you the scope of work in detail for you to understand what your roles and responsibilities are on this project. Now, as a project manager, you should already know what you have to do, but a lot of times the scope of work is kind of open-ended, where you have to kind of read through it to understand what your responsibilities are and what your deliverables are. So everybody has a different style of project management. What I like to do is whenever I get started with the project, there's a project kickoff call. Now, project kickoff call is going to be you on there, maybe the architect, maybe the engagement manager on there from your side, and then you may have like a whole team from the client side, and you all get on a call to understand the scope of work. Now, scope of work you already have defined with the client, but this is when you actually read it out loud and kind of walk through it with the client, maybe on a projector or something like that, to clearly define what the roles and responsibilities are. So once you have done the project kickoff, after that, each of the parties know what their responsibilities are. So the first thing I like to do is I try to understand how frequently my client wants an update. Now, a lot of clients will not want an update bi-weekly or even weekly, or maybe twice a week or whatever, because a lot of clients, they are very busy with their BAU, business as usual activities. So you really want to understand when they want that update, right? So what I normally do is try to understand that. Sometimes it's bi-weekly, sometimes it's weekly. I try to stick to weekly if I don't get a response from the client, because that's the best time. Every Friday, I pick out Friday around 10 or 9 o'clock in the morning to make sure that I could clearly define to them what is the status for that week and what have you done. So once you understand from a client side that, okay, they're looking for a project update every 2 weeks or every week, let's just say every week. So set out a time. Normally Friday is a great day around 9 or 10 o'clock. And, I normally have built out a template for myself that I run through. And what it tells is pretty much the current status, what the plans are for next week, what are the potential challenges, and issues that we're seeing and how can we overcome them. So this way they kind of know where you are, and you kind of want to keep this very straightforward, brief, and easy for them, because you don't want to burden them with too much details, right? So you want to kind of keep this high level, and maybe like a half-hour call, and that's it, right? I mean, unless specifically client asks for like an hour call for this type of work. Now, depending on the project, sometimes it's half hour, sometimes it's an hour, it depending on like what is actually being done, what's the size of the project, and all of that. So half hour to hour, I think that's sufficient time for you to provide your status update. So from the scope of work, you already know what the roles and responsibilities are of the people that are working with you. So now you may have an architect, may have a senior engineer, maybe a couple of engineers under them, and maybe somebody else that is helping out on the project. Now, of course, if a project gets too big, sometimes you lose in track of who's doing what and what timelines they're supposed to submit their assignments in, or their projects, or for their piece of the delivery piece that they have to do. So you have to really, as a project manager, have your hands around that. So what I normally do is something called task delegation. Task delegation is pretty much assigning roles and responsibilities on a chart or something on an Excel file, saying, who's doing what, what's their name, and how to, what is their timeline that they need to deliver by. Now, you could do a basic matrix as well, as similar to that. You could do Gantt charts or something like that. Now, that's one thing for task delegation. Now, you also want to have a project timeline. Project timeline, kind of a high-level overview of what the roadmap is and what the planning phase, how long that's going to take, how long testing is going to take, how long the pilot's going to take, what sites are being cut over first, and so on and so forth. So you want to have that timeline drawn out. You could use Microsoft Project. That's a really excellent tool. I've used that many times. You could use Gantt charts as well. You could use Excel. I've built colorful Excel charts just to show the timelines. So I mean, it's really up to you how fancy you want to get with that. So normally I like to do two types of meetings. One is on the client side, and then one is internal. Now, internal, I will probably do twice a week, normally maybe a Monday and maybe a Thursday. So this will kind of give me, okay, what tasks were assigned on Monday and how far they have progressed by Thursday. That's going to kind of give me that, and then be prepared for my status update for a Friday morning call. So what I do is it gives me a really good idea of who's doing what and who's slacking, who's not, and which resource needs more help that I could jump in, involve myself, and help them overcome that challenge or whatever they're having, right? So you want to make sure you have internal meetings separate from your client side. Now, the client meetings, I always do one-on-ones with them, or maybe engage like an architect as well on the call, because I want to kind of go over the timelines that I've set out for the project deliveries. Now, the timelines are pretty much what the client's expectations are from you guys. So that timeline is pretty much given by the client to you. Now, you push back only when you know there are certain things that can't be done in an allotted time. So that's when you, bring your, case about why this cannot be done in a certain amount of time. But you have to make sure that you guys, both parties agree on the timeline, and you have to constantly show your timeline to the client and kind of show them how far you have gotten and what else, what are the next steps, and so on and so forth. Now, some of this is also discussed in the status update, so you don't have to worry about that too much, but of course you want to bring the timeline up with the client. So a lot of times a project's running behind, and it's not necessarily a fault of anybody. It's just how sometimes things get, misaligned, maybe from the client side or maybe from the internal side. So there's nobody to blame there, but at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to kind of deliver the deadline that the client and you agreed with on the timeline, right? So in those cases, sometimes the engineers have to work overtime, or the architects have to maybe help out, jump in, and get their hands dirty as well as with the engineers. So in times like these, you want to make sure that you do deliver on time. So what I do is I create work sessions. Now, work sessions are pretty much Nobody likes work sessions, but sometimes they have to be put on the calendars. And work sessions are probably like 4 or 5 hours of continuous meeting or a technical bridge that you open, and you put all your engineers on there, and you have them screen share and maybe help address some of the challenges that they're facing, the reason for why the project's getting delayed. And there's been a lot of times that I've come across engineers having personal issues or something like that. So you always have to have that some sort of a bandwidth to be able to swap resources out and make sure that as a project manager you're really on top of that and kind of understand what the engineers are facing, so you could address that in a timely manner. Because if you don't stay on top of it, 2 days before the project deadline you find out that something's missing or something's not getting done on time, then that's the last thing you want to do is try to make those people work overtime in the last 2 days and make them finish their job. So work sessions is something that I personally like as well, because everybody's on the same page, everybody's viewing the same screen, and you're just working behind, you're just providing status updates like every hour, and you just, at the end of the day, the goal is to just get the job done, right? Because the client's expecting, they paid a lot of money for you and they're expecting work to be done within a certain amount of time, and this is where you come in to help out. But that's it for project management from my side. Normally that's normally how it goes, but there's sometimes depending on what phase of the project life cycle you are in, you have to do certain things differently. But overall, I think this is a good general idea that I wanted to give you guys and kind of help out for the people that are getting into this type of field. And some, depending on the clients, some clients really are up your throat about everything, but some clients are really chill and relaxed and laid back, and they trust your decision, so they let you do your work. So it really depends on the type of client you get. But overall, I hope this video made sense for you guys, and hopefully it helps some of you guys out. But if you have any questions, drop in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, like the video, hit the bell icon, so next time I upload a video you could check it out. Till next time guys, see you guys later.